Hi, this is Jim Cheesebro, and this is a video of my lesson with Ron Barron. Ronald Barron was the principal trombone player with the Boston Symphony Orchestra, as most of you probably already know. And I happen to think that he was a pioneer in the recording of trombone music. Back in the day when I was a young student, there weren't very many recordings of trombone players, and one of the first ones that I owned was Le Trombone Français, featuring Ron. I was very lucky to have this opportunity, and in this lesson, as in all of my lessons, I'm amazed at what a master teacher can get done in just one lesson, and it's really, really wonderful. In the video, you'll see Ron analyze my warm-up routine. You'll see him speak about famous musicians like Ed Kleinhammer that he's known, and he speaks about so much more than just playing the trombone. All musicians would benefit from seeing his advice to all trombonists at the very end of the video. I hope you enjoy this video as much as I enjoyed taking the lessons, and thanks to Ron for being able to work with me on this project. Well, Ron, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to
my pleasure.
Help me with this project. First thing I'll do is I go through my routine. Usually I start with some buzzing. Since I'm making some changes here, I try to be very careful of setting an embouchure that works. Trying to get the air flowing, do some glissandi. Buzzing and slow lip slurs. One of the things that...
Let me comment on what you've done so far. With the mouthpiece stuff, it's fine. I have no objection to that. But I would add, in working with the mouthpiece alone, that you might consider, I don't do too much of it, but when I do, I try to find the right amount of cover to imitate the resistance of the instrument. So that I'm not working with just a. I find that I focus better, and it gives the same amount of pressure and sensation, which is different than those people who are. There's some great mouthpiece players out there, and I think while that's maybe interesting, it's not generally what you want to get to be a proficient mouthpiece performer. You want it to have it help you naturally, and that's good. But if it helps in any way, that's fine. And particularly when you don't have the instrument available, so you can concentrate on pitch and focus. But I just find it a little bit. It's kind of a guard against having it be any sort of negative impact. To have a little bit of. You can play with that to find. In other words, play the note of the instrument, and then try to buzz the same note and see if you can replicate the resistance that you felt with the instrument. Yeah. And as far as what you did with your glissandi is great, but there's no reason why you shouldn't. When you started in the sixth, you went up and back. That's fine. Do it that way rather than stopping. I think it's better to just bend. It's bending down, and do a few of them down before you go to the F. So you've taken the whole purpose of your exercise there is to kind of wake stretched out to build a bridge of continuity from where you started to where you end up. And I think you don't want to, every time you put more distance in it, you're having to start over again a little bit. Now, you didn't do that when you came up the slide. You went up and back. I prefer that. I think that's more useful. Just, they're not big deals, just observations, which I would think might make that be, those patterns hopefully a little more useful. Now, you're moving on.
I know that Joe Alessi has often said, and many other people, when you start your lip slurs, go slow first, start on the E flat. Teacher has identified that in my plan. Yeah. There's that.
Now if you wanted to go, that's a different intention.
Right.
You're really trying to be precise about it without articulating it all.
Yeah.
If I add the tongue, now we get a little more definition. But that's not what you're trying to do here. You're trying to just get the airflow going and get things warmed up. So I would allow your slide, let your slide move slower. And you'll accomplish what I think you're trying to do right now. Save the accuracy for later in a musical setting where you don't want to be sloppy and too much portamento.
Yeah. This is very true, and I'm aware of that, so I'm going to try it again.
When you move in a faster pattern, let's call it quarters or eighths. When you move in the eighths, you do it. So do it with the quarters as well. Don't be afraid of the glissando. Right, and that keeps the air steady. It keeps the whole. It keeps the embouchure position steady, which is what your goal is at this point in the warm-up.
A little bit faster patterns. And I do want an A flat there. Not matching pitch, but adjusting pitch. So the So the third's flat
relative to the pedal. So the good news about that is that we can do that. The trombone is quite naturally adjustable that way.
And I've discovered
more than some of the other valve instruments and such, which require sometimes some embouchure changes, which are not as friendly.
Now, is the second partial
adjustments, I guess.
The second partial naturally sharp? I find that.
Well, if you do it, when you play an octave, the tendency is to pull these upper tone down to match the octave. That may be what. So if you establish a drone, and then the second partial is the octave.
All right.
So and it's not generally considered to be necessary to be, not necessarily. But if somebody's holding that pedal, you may have to lower that one to match it.
Yeah.
Because you can do a lot of acoustics about, when you analyze, I'm sure you have, the relative ups and downs of each partial in the 16, let's call it, whether one's raised or flat. But then when you get into harmony, when you're sounding them all at the same time, now they're different a little bit. So you can't always depend on that. So if you have a, you know how it is, let's suppose you have a major chord, right? You know that the fifth would be a little wider and the third brought down. And the top octave can't be too high to the bottom octave.
Okay.
So that's why, but the basses tend to play sharp in the orchestra because they hear it clearly. So everybody can ride on top of that a little bit lower.
Right.
And the first player in the trombone section would definitely not want to make his octaves and thirds too sharp. Yeah. Otherwise he's going to be high. He's not blending with the trumpets better, but he's going to be high with the low brass. Yeah. Then of course the minor third you don't want to have down. But if you add the flat seventh, if you have a dominant seventh, the seventh is going to be down, and the ninth will be down a little bit, and the 11th might be adjusted, a little bit different. When you have multiple chord lengths.
Oh, okay.
You see what I'm getting?
Oh, when
like
not in the opening series, but in the series.
All those guys, minor nights or major nights.
Yeah.
But so when you have a chord sounding in harmony, it's different than the tendencies of each member of the series as you're just doing it independently. But he's still fine, and I do it. We all do it. Trombonists, everybody does it. I guess all single tube string. There's always that tendency to not make the adjustments enough in where they are. And goodness knows the French horn would be, with all the different keys they can play in, all the different open horn and F4 and B flat combinations. I like bass trombone, double bass trombone. When you know how it goes. So we make those adjustments, and we unfortunately we don't make them as spontaneously and naturally as we need to all the time, and so we end up. But then again, if you add another tone to the mix, and also the texture or the timbre of a different instrument, now you have a different animal. So I think that's why it becomes awkward. And I encourage people all the time, and you can do it in your warm up as well. It doesn't help you if you. No. Why did I do that? I really kept breathing until I had enough air so that I could blow a steady, even, solid sound, and if it's out of tune, then adjust it. Nobody's more out of tune than a group that gets together and starts messing with trying to find the tuning, because they'll have no center to their own sound. So establishing the center to your sound is crucial with everything you're going through now. First, you're limbering up the embouchure. This is great, but then as soon as you start these last things, you start to get one tone going for a period of time. It needs to be as clearly centered in your mind, and therefore the production of it clearly focused as possible. And play it solidly. Don't be shy about it. Then you'll be able to tell if it's high or low to whatever if you're trying to adjust it to anything. And that's security. That security you establish on your own will then go with you when you get in any setting where the pitch is slightly different. Because either you can adjust it here and not destroy this, or at least you keep your center, and maybe you have to do. Luckily, we can do it with the slide. So we have many options of adjusting our pitch, but it can't be adjusted by the air column, in my view. If you adjust that for musical taste, sometimes we mess with everything. But that's not the point. The point is that you establish this solid relationship with the tube, that you're producing the sound as middle and centered as you can, and then, and I think that is, after all, a lot of the function of preparation and warm-up for any of us, and then we can think about the musical aspects of what we're trying to do. I think everything you're doing is fine, and I always do a lot of the Remington, you said she was singing, and to do it as well as I'd like to, you heard what contortions I went through just there to stabilize it, because it wasn't really as solid as I want it to be. It doesn't so much matter exactly what you do, it's what it does for you that matters. And really warm up, the definition of warm up in my mind is to then be prepared to forget about the instrument and think about the music. And to the extent that we can be prepared to think about the music and just use this, then the warm up was successful. And it needs to happen kind of all the time.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you never get to the point where the basics of production and execution don't need constant reinforcement to keep the foundation strong, and therefore forget about the trombone.
All that on my mind right now. I'm going to play you some
and you see that what can happen now, Jim. You know, we're all guilty of it too. Think about it, but then forget about it. You know that.
Yeah.
So think about it as long as you need to you feel confident that you can forget about it. But show me what else you're doing. Blow up my hand, don't stop.
Okay, and don't take crescendo.
Do crescendo, decrescendo as you wish, but don't stop blowing at the hand, even when you decrescendo. You go quicker that way. Get the point? That when you diminuendo, you don't just disappear, you're still directing it.
Okay.
It's still going right to that spot. You can do it without me. It's helpful to pick a spot in the room, let's say the bottle over there, if you're in a room, a door handle, a light switch, anything, and keep that thing on a laser beam, right, whatever the dynamic. And what you're doing is great control building. That's essential stuff.
So we would do that in all registers.
Sure.
We won't play through them because the people don't want to watch that.
Well, don't warm out.
This Brad Edwards lip slur book.
Okay.
I purchased that when I started the project, and I liked it because it has 3 sections. One is slow slurs, fast slurs, and then etudes with no articulation whatsoever. So I read through the book.
Now, has he written it so that it can be executed that way?
Yes,
No, does he want glissandos, or he wants everything with natural slurs?
Natural slurs.
Okay.
It's written so that you can use natural slurs.
Okay.
It has a suggested order of study, so I've gone back to level A, which is A out of A through F, and have started playing through these a little bit. Number 3 is developing natural slurs across the grain. So, about 60.
Be more convincing.
And I'll skip down a little bit.
Steady between the whole thing, so there's non-stop.
So start in the upper part.
Start the upper one. Okay. It was too much let down in the air with the break. connected. It'll all be, and it all really, don't sacrifice pitch for that. When your mind is on one thing, don't let the other thing go away. I had some time ago, I got I guess it was, what you send? I don't send stuff, emails, but MP3s, whatever you send music. Yeah. I got something from a former student who's, I won't tell you where he is, he's working abroad now, he's a fine player, good musician. And he was auditioning for a position back in his home country. And he sent me this recording. He said, listen to it, see what you think, because I got rejected summarily, you know. And I listened to it, and I wrote back, I said, well, you know, it's out of tune. He wrote back, he said, listen to it, you'll hear it. Oh yeah, he says, my mind was so tied up in the music and everything else, I just didn't realize it was out of tune. Now that, you don't want to become so narrowly focused that you only think on one thing. You do want to think about the music, yes. But to the extent that your brain becomes focused on only one thing, something else can kind of slip away. So be patient with it. That the definition of what you're trying to do is really clear. And frankly, if you're blowing sufficiently and supporting well enough, you should be able to very easily hear when it's out of tune, make that quick adjustment. And that's crucial. Because the more you don't do that, and the more you reinforce a casual approach to that. Right. I mean, I can't tell you how many people, and they begin to believe it, and they think it sounds great, and they pick up the instrument and they play like that all the time. Is a different animal, and they just don't hear it because they get so used to the other one that their ears tell them that that's right. So I think those are just an observation that you don't want to lose touch with that. And then all of these other, and then you'll find that in order to be in tune, it'll take a little more concentrated airflow, and you'll work harder to make that happen.
In the last journal, there was an article that Mr. Yeo had written about Mr. Kleinhammer, and it said,
oh yeah, he was Mr. Oh my gosh, I first met with him in the '60s. He had the reel-to-reel tape machine there, and we'd play something, and he would play it back at half speed. You know, so every tone sounded. You hear that one? You hear that one? He was so analytical about that, and you know, that was Ed's orientation. He was so determined and getting everything just so, and keeping it just so, and everything. And while I think that can be a little pedantic for some people, it may be a little limiting. Obviously, it was what he needed to do, and he reinforced the reality of all that on that students that came through for you know. So you know, you don't want to get too mechanical and scientific, although there's nothing wrong with knowing that and being really crystal clear about it. Like we talk about how many slide positions are there? I mean, you know, how many hundreds of slide? Well, there's not a definition for that, because now you're taking some of the musical instinctive things away from and making it mechanical. So there has to be a balance of the two. Yeah. And I think the warm up and the prep, the mechanical belongs there, to be sure. Right. And if that's where we need it, and not when it comes time to play the concert. You know.
I'll jump to the last one in the first set, which is, this is developing slurs with triggers and also trying to go a little lower.
Okay.
Now with new equipment, guys are going to the trigger as fast as possible, and I think.
Well, I think they do themselves a little disservice, depending upon what they're trying to play. I don't know if you were standing there when I was talking to Abby about Christopher Columbus.
No.
I have a habit of because kids use the valve for everything, particularly the Hungarian march drives me nuts, and they, you know, if you had to play it without the valve, you know, you'd use 6 and 7 that you needed to.
Yeah.
It'd be harder in some ways, I understand. But I'd use the analogy, the trombone players who are kind of like Europeans in the Middle Ages. You look at Europe at the time, and you look at a map, and you see the outline of the continent, pretty much. Then to the west, you see the Atlantic Ocean. But it only goes so far. And then just beyond that, you see demons and dragons and all sorts of critters that are very dangerous and very scary. So is Columbus and all this crew. I mean, these guys didn't want to go out there because you just didn't know what was going to happen. And I said, it's kind of like trombone players. They get out here around 5th position on the edge of the map. And if they go further, they'll fall off the edge of the earth. You know, so they have that fear. And so it's like, okay, well, we realize that it's okay. The Atlantic Ocean keeps going to North America, and we can use the rest of the trombone, you know. It's okay. It won't hurt you, even if you go halfway across the Atlantic like I just did. So that silliness, I think, is applicable because there's this great anxiety. And people then forget where 6 and 7 are. They lose confidence in it. They don't play it well in tune, and that reinforces their lack of confidence. So there's a vicious circle there.
Right.
Whereas if you play or some similar pattern, then your ear will start to tell you where those notes are. And you won't just casually go or some other thing which is totally wrong. Also, thinking chromatically. You know, that's the chromatic scale is we kind of lose. It's not always awkward. We lose touch with it a bit. But the more you can reinforce these things on a daily basis and reestablish good intonation with your ear, so you don't lose that, and then thinking about the slide or thinking about air, which is important, of course, too. But also then reinforcing the right spot on the slide by the air. If the air is solid, you'll know when it's out of tune right away. It's better to play it out of tune and fix it than to keep playing this kind of amorphous, lack of defined thing. So I think a lot of these things can be accomplished, getting warmed up, establishing security, establishing a good relationship with the instrument, doing what you're doing. But the two things: don't give up on the air supply. The fuel can't. Don't run out of fuel. If you run out of fuel, just retank. Don't worry about stopping. Just retank. Because one of the things at my age, I'm always out. I seem to have no gas left. Does that tie into where we were going?
Yeah. The alternate, the use of the trigger in 6 and 7.
Yeah. Now, there's nothing wrong. You know, the trigger's fine. It's great.
Right.
But when you're playing. You know. And it sounds bad. And it's not the push and pull.
Right.
The toughest thing about playing the trombone is just that. The awkwardness of the slide. The back and the forth. Jimmy Pugh talked about a little bit in his session. He talked about talking about JJ and wrestling. I think you were there.
Yeah.
And you know the way one uses the slide, and we want to use the instrument in conjunction with the body to get the maximum comfort about what we're trying to express. So the way we use the arm works better like this. It doesn't work so well like that.
Right.
So the more musical material we can pick up in one direction comfortably with a good sound, the more facile, like the little example from Berlioz.
Right.
For me, and I use positions that many players don't. Even that one, you see, which my colleagues didn't do, but I found it perfectly successful, and the sound is good.
Yeah.
It's not like they're compromising any tone with it.
Right.
So, I think if you look around, Rochu, anyplace else, you'll find many situations where the way we choose to use the slide, all these more things can help contribute to it, will help us to accomplish the musical intent of something. And people are afraid of it. There's an old book by Marsteller about advanced slide technique, which had almost everything below third position. It was like he was using the entire instrument practically. It was kind of ugh. And I asked people to play, it's a little off topic here for you, but I asked people to learn D flat and G flat major scales without using first position. 3 octaves, for example. But it makes you use the rest of the instrument, and G flat too, yeah. Now I guess one down. Never you have to get a first. So forth. But it's just a one little thing that just helps to show a player how you can use the whole instrument and get away from the need to be back and forth. Now, some people will say that's rubbish, that you need to use the shortest length of tube all the time for the maximum sound. Sometimes I don't want the maximum sound. I want the musical intent of what I'm trying to play to have a different color to it. When you play. So for me, the color I get in those positions is more for me musically suitable to what I'm trying to do, and I'm not afraid of them. So.
Seemed like years ago they used to talk about your choice of positions based on the slide direction to keep the line going.
I think that's not a bad idea.
And now it's more. They don't talk about slide as much anymore. They talk about tone quite a bit.
Well,
and so I think.
Yeah, we get it. American players have a habit, probably developed by certain orchestras, I guess, of this brick mentality, this really solid, incredibly secure brick that is so unending, very, very, very controlled, so that you play a scale. With no variation and deviation, which shows that in great control. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. It is only one way of viewing what one needs to do, and I think it tends to I think be a little limiting in musical scope. That's all I can say.
I'm going to do a little, just some real quick, fast things, so you can see.
With valve? Was that the idea? With not necessarily with valve.
No, okay, this is something just to.
Sure. Choose something and blow what you just did right at that spot for me. Observation on that?
It feels a lot different. I'm not sure that I hear a lot of difference, but it feels a lot different. It feels like, I just do a gesture, it feels like this as opposed to this. So it feels like maybe the air is moving farther, possibly faster. When I do
it's
that.
Getting you away from thinking about this and getting the direction this way. I think it's more successful. I like it much better. And because the more you're tied up in this, the more you're placing each note, you're restricting the air column, and you're asking the embouchure to do the work. And the embouchure has to be stable, but the embouchure will fail on you unless it is supported. And so it needs to have this constant support behind it. Like it's kind of like I don't know, throwing the baseball without using the whole body, just a part of the arm. So you need to have the entire follow through of everything, and there needs to be a motion that. And when I breathe, I want to try to have as much comfort in my entire system so I can breathe efficiently and naturally, and have then the direction of the air be as constant as I can, at least in my mind, regardless of where it's actually physically going.
Right.
And I like the second example much better. It was more secure, more connected. It felt easier to do. It made better sense. Before you were trying to place it and be more careful. And I think that will hold you. Don't try quite so hard.
Yeah.
Breathe and listen.
Right.
And try to get your concentration away from the production area a little bit if you can.
Okay.
We may know you may need to go back and analyze production things from time to time, but the analysis paralysis thing can be very evident, and so you don't want to get too tied up in that. Yeah. It's only when something is truly failing that we can determine. I also the tongue should be inactive here. It shouldn't be. It should be kind of useless and just not restricting anything. And don't try to be too open. If you try to open up too much, you'll restrict. You want to get focused. This open concept can be very damaging because you go, you need to have pressure trying to get too wide. So then you lose the direction, you lose the pitch, you lose also mouthpieces with too big of backbores will lose the center of the sound voice, things like that. So there has to be a balance between the two. And I like this second example.
Yeah. I do more of each of these, but now I'm going to move to the lip slur melodies, which is the last part.
Okay.
This is
all these are fine with these other thoughts.
Yeah.
It's the material itself is not the issue.
Right. It's always what you do with it.
So you're more confident with it. Just blow through it. Tendency would be to play it carefully and note by note.
Yes.
And you need to play on longer arcs and patterns rather than notes, and just take your breath and say, I'm gonna apportion my air from point A to point B, and it's gonna be steady across that line. It all rides on the same. If we have trouble with a pattern, listen to that pattern in your ear and just play one steady supported note. Then you can hear if the air changes. If you're breaking up and not a lot of breaking up in the air column, right?
Right.
But if you're playing the pattern and it's not that steady, then not the brick, but it's the same support as the brick.
Right.
It's the same steady, constant, non-ending flow.
Yeah, and I feel like brick is static. This is not static. This is motion.
No, it is. That's right. There is a direction to that for sure.
At the Eastern Trombone Workshop, I heard Jimmy Robertson play the Fantasia by He Does Street. About halfway down the second page, the voices got so loud I couldn't even read the music. You know what I mean by the voices? Oh my gosh, why did you do that? When I got back, you know, it's a.
Well, one thing I would like.
The one thing I'm doing that I can't seem to break out of is I'm playing it so darn heavy. It's like crash.
Well,
it's
too one-dimensional. It all sounds the same. There was wasn't any idea in contrast. Silence is golden in these things too. So I don't know how it's written, but it needs to be shaped better. If you come to this not thinking about trombone and production and all those things, but thinking more about the ideas behind what you're trying to express, I'm sure that the trombone will be okay. It's not the trombone that's standing in the way. It's more a matter of kind of what do I want to say with this thing? Where am I trying to go with it? And what is now all these little flourishes in one position are very idiomatic for the trombone. So you want to take advantage of all that and then take more time and less time depending on, it's like any cadenza, anything alone, it can be so boring and one-dimensional and kind of prod along. See, I got a sameness out of it that after a while I lost interest. You see.
Okay.
I've heard this before, even though it's different material. So I would encourage you to think about it from the standpoint of the musical ideas. What do you want to get from it? And I there's nothing that dictates that you have to stay in time. In this case, now there's some areas that sound very exciting being in time, but others where making the audience wait a little bit makes whatever you do much more interesting. So that there's more of an anticipation, and then your wonderful singing beauteous tone or your magnificent technique or anything that's following that will be more compelling to listen to. And I don't know, I've never played this, but I would go rip through that as best you can.
Okay.
I just decided to do it that way just now. I might rethink it and do it a little different. My point is, you see that I've given you a whole lot of different dynamics, different speeds and changes. Even though he wrote it straight out in time, and he didn't give you he didn't say speed up or slow down or anything. He gave you no guidance whatsoever. So you have to get imaginative in how you want to feel it. Not if you just march it along at 96. The material is not engaging enough in and of itself to keep our interest. You see, so it's flamboyant, it's lyrical, it's all these things that I think he's attempting to be. But your engagement in your ideas of how you wish to express it and how you want to convey whether it's the melancholy or whether it's the brillante or whatever, or the anger, whatever emotion you want, it needs emotional guidepost, and then you'll play it that way. You may change your mind another time. It need not be exactly the same way each time. Right. It's fantasy, it's fantasia. So it can be whatever fantasy you imagine. But I believe you owe this not just the technical study of it, but the imagination of it, so that you can make it a little more of a storytelling. And then you'll worry more about the trombone. You won't worry about whether the notes connect or whether there's a slur here. And then it'll be more interesting, and it'll be more fun for you to play it. I think,
John Drew said, "Jim, you think too much."
Well, I think,
he said, "You need to be more expressive and feel." And
I think you'll enjoy it more.
Yeah.
Because it isn't as though you lack for expression. We all have expression. We all you have plenty of imagination and creativity. It's part of our everyday life. We do it all the time. So don't be afraid of that in this. Allow yourself to take the elements that are exhibited here, as requested with the trombone, and display them, enjoy them, And I think you'll all the things that might concern you technically will be less important then, and you'll probably do them better because you'll be trying to express something more that's not related to that. That's why I say, take your elements of thought as to how you're actually playing the instrument, and think about that, but keep that divorced from the music making a little bit, because the music making, your ability to make the music will be helped by your foundation, and the foundation needs to be reinforced all the time. That's like I use the house analogy. You know, foundations develop cracks or something. You have to go back and patch it up. But it doesn't matter what color your walls are if the foundation falls down. And you haven't really. So you're all concerned about foundation right now, but you can't seem to look at the walls. Yeah. And we need to work on the foundation, and when that's and then have confidence that that's in place. And then once the walls are up, consider the paint colors and how would the room look different with a different color. You know, so that's where we want to get to. You know, that's the part of the house that you want to add on. And it doesn't mean that you'll do it the same time every house you come to. The next house you come to, you want to paint a different color. You know. So
yeah. Maybe I could just play the first section and then
see if you can do something a little more expressive with it. Is the best term I could use. It doesn't have to be what I did. It can be whatever you think you might want to feel about it. But the one thing I think makes it, except for certain spots, if you decide that a certain section would sound best in time for a while, then do that, and maybe then you'll decide whether that's the right way that should feel. But what happened is it went on a little bit too long like that, and there was no suspense. Right. There was nothing that kept me thinking what's coming next. Less predictable. It's a little bit like you're still trying to play it in time. You've heard it that way for so long. Right. It's hard for you to get away from that. Yeah. But you'll have to allow yourself a little more freedom of thought. Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid of it. I find something like that far more interesting. You know, when it's you know that's why it's silence. You know, silence is great. There's no and whenever you play that first, for example. I'll try to do that. I messed you up with the thing here. I'm all over the map rhythmically, but I'm trying to imagine the shape of the ideas. Yeah, and be more. And it's more spontaneous. It's more flamboyant. I know, but then when you come to a spot. And then what's coming? What you create tension in the listener. And then whatever you play is really more interesting. Yeah. So I think that's the thrust of what I'm suggesting.
Well, everything you've said has been wonderful. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do offer every person who's been videoed a chance, if there's anything to say that you thought that the whole trombone world would want to hear, and there have been some very diverse answers. Some people said, no, there's nothing I would like to say to all the trombonists in the world. but other people have, I'll tell you what some of them are later.
Yeah, fine.
Anything that you would like to share with all of us?
Oh my. I guess the one thing I would, an anecdote I'll share. When I was had a gig in Japan, and everyone was very kind and nice to me, as people are there when they come to hear you play. And so many people afterwards autographs, the usual routine. And the last chap in line, whose English wasn't terribly good, he said, "Mister, what secret?" And I said, "Love music." And I walked away from him. And he was stunned. He didn't know what to say. And the comment, my response just came spontaneously. I didn't know what else to say. But I think it's the root of the whole thing, in essence, when I reflected back on it. And he wanted some magical cure, you know. He wanted an elixir which would give him high F in 20 seconds or something like that. Yeah. And I think what gets us all here and what drives us in the beginning is just that. Our passion, our love for music, our devotion to it, and what it does for us that we can't explain. And we have a tendency with all the other confusions of business and work to lose that along the way. And I think that regardless of all the foundational things we discuss, which are crucial to managing the equipment or managing any instrument one plays, that it must lead to and reinforce our basic love and devotion to music. And to the extent that it can help us do that, then it's anything we do that reinforces that is really worthy. And you know, it's been great to me. I can't complain. So you know, and it's that passion, that love of it that really is like so rewarding.
Well, we can see that when you play. And,
well, if I can't feel that and I can't express that, I'm missing the boat somewhat. You know, and I hope everyone, no matter, you know, and I encourage, you know, I traveled and I met a lot of people on different levels of playing, and particularly when Harvey Phillips was big on going to amateur bands every place. He said, try to encourage everybody to stay invested. Get back to why you did it and why you loved it, and why it meant to you. You may not be practicing all the time. You're at work all day. You're in an office or you're whatever, you executive or whatever you do for a living. But the musical component, which is part of your existence, is so much a part of the human condition, and it's what we hope to instill in everybody, and it's what we have to have in the professional world. We're not going to have any audiences at Tanglewood or anyplace else, you know. And so it's that part of what music does for us that I think we have to keep grasping and don't let it get away.
Great, Ron. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jim. Pleasure.